All right, I will call to order regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Monday, April 15th, 2019, at 6:30 PM. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is approval of minutes. I have two,
Which one?
so I will move to accept the April 1st, 2019 minutes as written. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. I will make a motion to accept the April 5th, 2019 minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
If there's anyone present to speak, we just ask that you state your name and address for the record.
So
I just need you to identify yourself by name and address.
I'm Dr. Rosa Chinchilla.
Okay.
And I just said the minutes were correct on that last time, but, so I just wanted to talk to the topic of last week, because I felt that the minutes reflect that we, the neighbors of a residential neighborhood, should alert the proper authorities if there's undue noise. And I feel those neighbors feel that it places an undue burden on the neighbor who calls the police and on the neighbor that is visited by the police. And we don't know what the consequences of that visit of the police would be. And so we feel strongly that because it is a residential neighborhood, that there are laws that apply to that. And I'm asking the Board of Selectmen to acknowledge through some kind of either a public statement or an insert in the WIllington magazine that we publish, or even to contact those neighbors that are doing this kind of thing. And I was looking through the town ordinances, and I found under planning and zoning the number is 4.15.02.01 that states about noise that the sound pressure level of any operation other than the operation of motor vehicles or other transportation facilities or operations involved in the construction or demolition of structures or time signals shall not exceed the decibel levels designated in octave bands as stated in Table 4.1. And if you go to Table 4.1, it states that within any residence district or its boundaries, that the cycles per second should be between 25 and 75, and 72 is given as the number. And then below that, in Table 4.2, it states that noise occurs between the hours of 9 p.m. and 8 a.m. should be 3 decibels negative of 72, so it would be 69, and I was looking up what the decibel level of 70 was, and it said that it's the same as when a car going 65 miles per hour on like a big road like 74, that's the noise. And so I think that it is a town ordinance.
So that's a planning and zoning regulation?
Yeah.
And so any particular complaints that fall under that would, there is a way to actually file a complaint in the planning and zoning office, and that would fall under that. In order to accurately identify whether or not the sound as it occurred fell into those would be to be using a decibel meter. Is it the proper decibel meter?
And do we have decibel meters?
We do not, I do not even believe that I cannot say for sure that the planning and zoning, but I do not believe that we do. I'm unaware of one. And that was some of our issue when we were looking at the noise ordinance. There were some things, right, that made it a little bit more difficult in actually answering the complaint at 11 p.m. So who would then be the person in lieu of our own residency trooper who would happen to be on duty at that time, or our own police force, who would be the person to answer that call if, say, you called at 11 o'clock at night and there was a concern and they were to check the noise level at that point. So we had a lengthy conversation about how that was difficult to detect and how the enforcement would be handled. A planning and zoning regulation is not enforced by this board. That is taken up through planning and zoning specifically. I will look into that, and I will speak with our zoning agent, Mike D'Amato. I'll reach out to he and/or Emily tomorrow and see if they can talk to us specifically about that regulation and see if I can get you some information regarding that. But a complaint that is surrounding specifically a violation of a planning and zoning regulation would go through that office, and Emily Perko is our current zoning enforcement agent and would look into those things. So there is an avenue for that, but there is not an actual ordinance. So this is
But aren't those town ordinances? Is that under planning and zoning?
the regulations. So they fall under two different categories. So one is whole town, where the town would then vote on an ordinance, as opposed to those regulations that are done through the Planning and Zoning Commission.
But I mean, I still feel that the Board of Selectmen is the mayors of this town,
Right.
and that you should enforce those.
Can I speak?
You
for a second?
absolutely.
Too. So we have, and there's no way for us to answer in the full complexity of the conversations that we've had on this issue over the last year. But we have engaged in this conversation, I think probably up until, what was the last meeting where the trooper came?
You mean December?
So I would look,
November?
I encourage you to go back into our minutes and the recordings and kind of hear the progression of our conversation, because we've had a lot of discussion and debate about this issue. And I don't think we came to the conversation to the decision lightly about not at this point pursuing doing a noise or a nuisance ordinance. We have a lot of difficulty in terms of enforcement. And I think getting to your initial point, the main point is, if we have an ordinance or we don't have an ordinance, the state trooper is still where you're gonna call, regardless. That's always going to be the number that you're gonna call, because we don't have a service or a mechanism to be going out and doing decibel readings. We don't have the enforcement, we don't have a town police. So the state trooper is always gonna be who you're gonna call, regardless of whether or not we have an ordinance. And they have come to this meeting and spoken to other concerned residents about that is their job, and it is not an undue burden for them. It's one of their roles and responsibilities as Troop C covering our town. So if you have a concern, I would urge you to use that mechanism, because that's what's available to you. And if we have an ordinance, that's still gonna be what's available to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If we have an ordinance, they're
They
going
would
to
be
then enforce
responding anyway.
our ordinance.
Yeah.
And so that is, it could absolutely, with your neighbors, create what could potentially be a stressful situation. But if you believe that they are violating some of those noise statutes that exist, then that is the proper authority to contact, and they're the ones who could speak to that. And you would be doing that when that was happening, right? So then they could go out there and potentially hear the noise. Where if you call us, we could have a conversation, but we haven't actually when the noise isn't occurring, the decibel meter does nothing for us to say, yes, that was in fact the level of noise as you heard it, or as it occurred.
Yeah, just add something?
Yes, I just need you to state your name for the record.
Yeah, I will. Claudia Nunn, 7
Okay.
Common Road. I live across from this house that is making the noise. I
Okay.
live next to Rosa. And just to reiterate that as far as the bothersomeness of it, it's like you have to have fans on constantly. It's very hard to get to sleep at night. I have to have earplugs in. It's just a very big nuisance. And the other question I have is, now we're talking about a residential neighborhood. I don't think it's zoned commercial. I don't know if it's pending in zoning. Right, and we're in a historic district, so to have a business operating there, which seems like there's a business, working on car parts possibly throughout the night with cars riding around the neighborhood. I don't know if that's something you can tackle.
Well, so that's a little bit different than, I think what we heard from Dr. Chinchilla at our last meeting. And that absolutely could be a violation of zoning regulations. And there is a mechanism in place in which to make that complaint. The complaint form they have available at the office right around the corner here, and it's also online under the planning and zoning page. And if you fill that out, Emily will absolutely, her job is enforcement of those things, and then they start to take a look at that. So yes, operating a business where one shouldn't be in a residential zone, or in a commercial zone, there are mechanisms in place to then look into those factors. So I encourage you to fill out that complaint form and start that conversation with Emily, in which case they would go out and see what was going on and have the conversation with the resident to start with. But if it's 11 o'clock at night and the noise is so loud that you are unable to sleep, I encourage you to contact that proper authority, because that's what's at your disposal to be able to help you with those things, and in any residential neighborhood. So they would then come out and speak to the neighbor. And sometimes maybe it's just an awareness or a lack of awareness on their part of how loud they are being, and sometimes just that simple conversation in the process could deter things. But if you believe that they're doing something outside of what's zoned in that residential area, then I would encourage you to start here, because they could make you aware if they did have, if they had the zoning to do what it is that they're doing, and if they don't, they have the mechanism in place to begin the process. And those complaints then go through Planning and Zoning Commission.
Right, and we're not really trying to get this person in trouble, and I don't know if there's any
Absolutely
way
not.
to have him just modify it so it isn't such an annoyance. There's a very bright light that shines towards the house.
And those are things that they can help you with, so he can still do what he's allowed to do, but that fits within the confines of the area in which he's doing, so.
Have you talked to him about your problems?
No, we haven't.
You know,
Because we-
because sometimes it's as simple as that. He's shining a light out here, he doesn't realize until you say, and he said, oh, okay, I'll move the light.
Yeah, or you can just close the doors.
Well, he can do that too.
That too, that's right.
But if he does, if he closes the door, you're not any worse off. And if he cooperates with you, then it's a lot easier.
And we did, in the course of those discussions, and they were lengthy, months, we did have some instances that were satisfied by just the neighbors speaking to each other. They brought their complaint here, but hadn't had that open conversation. When they did, some things changed and some things didn't. But I encourage you to go that route. And if you don't feel that you've gotten the effective change that you feel is necessary, then I would investigate those other routes.
I mean, I just want to add, pertaining to that regulation, the planning and zoning, that, in the past, we've had issues, as we were talking the other day, with one of the neighbors who occasionally uses dynamite. And he hasn't done that in a long time, but that, according to this ordinance, also not just sound, but also vibrations exceeding a certain level are also under this rule. And it might help other neighbors who are continuing to live through that issue.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anyone else present to speak? not all at once. All right. Robin, were there no correspondence?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I had yours.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So there is a-
it got buried.
So there's a list of correspondence available in the selectman's office. All right, so status report, many of my items will fall under these other categories. So I will move on to Public Works. I'll apologize for Troy. It seems that there's an illness being shared amongst the Public Works crew, and so he's fallen into that this evening. So he went home after work today. I gave you a list of things that they're working on and have done at Public Works. So they began sweeping. They should be done with the town hall, the schools, and the senior center this week, and then they'll be starting sweeping on the south side of town this year. We had a well pump that failed at the old town hall, and that had to be replaced last week. They raised the water tank at the senior center, and that's so that they can get a bucket underneath it or a container in which to water their plants. They also patched holes around town and on Senior Way. They addressed today specifically drainage issues on the Fisher Hill end of Adamant Road, where they had to dig out a culvert, and then they had to address similar issues on other waterway issues after last night's rain and then this afternoon's rain. Our phone suddenly started ringing, so they were out there working on those. He's working on a plan for the chip sealing and paving for the season. He did speak with Stuart Cobb regarding radios for Public Works and a little bit on the upcoming CIP plan. Some of what they talked about with the radios was that our previous Public Works Director had submitted a plan that was for radios, I believe, just enough for the plow trucks and in that Public Works Director truck. And Troy feels strongly that all of our vehicles need to have those radios because they're not, when it's not snow season and they're not using those trucks, they're in things like the backhoe and the sweeper and the mower, and that those two should have radios so that then they could communicate back. So the number of radios that had initially been requested could be more. We would need more than what was initially requested, so he's looking at different ways to try to replace those, even if it means beginning with just a few amount and then replacing the rest of them, so he's looking at that. Troy is handling the steps project. You'll notice that they were poured once again. He met with Jim Rupert, our building official, and they discovered some discrepancies in the height of the steps. They found them to be measured differently, so Jim actually canceled his inspection with the company to have a third-party state inspector come out so that, again, it's a third party, a neutral party, taking a look at them to see if they are actually in compliance with the code. That inspection will occur on Thursday at 1 p.m. so that then we can all be on the same page. I plan to be there, as well as Troy and Jim and Elliot from Rock Fall. The railing had been fixed and the walls have been rubbed, but there is still a question as to whether or not those front steps are in fact to code, which right now we do not believe that they are, and we'll have to address that with the contractor when that happens. So I will let you know how that goes. If at 1 o'clock you would like to come out to either when the inspection happens, encourage that as well. So under Public Works, we have the annual tree contract. Is it annual, Robin, or no, it's semi-annual? So it's every 2 years, biannual. So we received, Troy opened the bids last week. We received 3 bids, one, and you should have them in your packet. One from Mountain Tree Service, one from New England Arborist Tree Care, and one from Linden Tree Service. So accepted the bid from Linden. Troy is recommending, my recommendation to remove the hazardous trees along roadside edges would be Linden Tree Service. This is a 2-year bid that would begin July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2021. That one was, the hourly rate is $8 more an hour, and the daily rate $50 more, based on the work that they've done in town and the reputation of the company. He felt that was, because they were so close, and he was more familiar with their work, he thought this was a better option for the town. And they've done work for us in the past, and reputable work.
And we've had them for, how many years? I think forever, haven't we?
I don't know the answer to that, many years. And if he wasn't familiar, yes.
I just wanted to ask, what trees are we felling?
So there's none specifically earmarked as when there are hazardous trees that have to come down, and we call a tree service out to come, if trees have come down during a storm, or suddenly something happened with a tree, those would be the trees. It's not that we have a plan to cut down trees.
And,
Which tree service?
yeah, because.
Oh, what tree service?
Yeah, because we need it.
So, right, so we haven't chosen, but the recommendation right now by the Public Works Director is for us to award the bid to Linden Tree Service.
I was just gonna speak in favor of Mountain Tree Service. They came to our house and they wired the big tree in front of our house. And the fellow who runs it is a very conscientious tree expert. And, you know, we've been just felling trees left and right. And we actually did take into our hands those 2 big oaks because they're of their historic nature. And they were centennial planted in 1865. Yeah, the 2 maples, the 2 maple trees.
Thank you.
And so I'm not just
All right. So I make a motion that we accept the bid for Linden Tree Service for a 2-year contract beginning July 1, 2019, ending June 30, 2021. The hourly rate of $150 an hour and daily rate of $1,100.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just state for the record, Lyndon has worked for the town for years and done a really good job. I'm sure Mountain does, I don't know them, but I do notice Mountain's rates or their estimates are way, way high,
They are considerably higher,
considerably higher, so.
which may not be unusual if they're small company they don't know anything about.
We're 50% higher, so it's a significant margin.
And I'm sure they're all good at what they do. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. The next contract you see is awarding field maintenance. Maureen and Troy opened that bid last week. We only received 1 bid, and it is from our current provider. So Maureen is recommending that we accept the proposal for field maintenance for the town of WIllington to Gregory Peck. Second.
He's been around as long as Lyndon, so.
Has he?
Yeah.
I will say until my tenure here, that my experience with them was limited to me. But we did only receive 1 bid. So I move that we award the field maintenance contract for July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2021 to Gregory Peck for field maintenance for the town of WIllington.
Second.
Any discussion?
How is this in comparison to previous rates? Like what's the
What our current rate
yeah,
is, you mean?
status and- yeah.
So that I don't have, the fingertips. Maureen has that information.
Yeah, I'd just be curious to see if it's.
Yeah, how
kind of
much it
like
increased,
about
because we are
the
current,
same.
right, because we are currently using them.
So,
If we had a speaker in Buzzard, I'm sure she's in her office. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
I'm,
Right, new business. So the first item, I wanted to, make you all aware, there had been a communication back in January from the Department of Labor, who had taken a look at how we reported our salaried employee payments, and they had some concerns that of the work week in which we correlated those payments. I think we talked a little regarding this. So currently, we prepay, so to speak, a portion of that in its correlation to a work week. So what Amanda has done in the past, and I believe this is prior to even Amanda, we took the salaried amount, divided up over the number of pay periods, and that was the way in which we did it. For this current fiscal year, the weeks worked so that there were 26 payments. They happened to begin a nice work week, and so you would get paid, so salaried employees currently get paid on a Thursday, and that pay period is the Monday before until the Friday after. So with the exception of the first 3 days, the rest of that is prepaid. The Department of Labor did not think that was the best way in which to do that. So they have allowed us to make that corrective action, and beginning in the fiscal year, what that could mean is that the first paycheck of the fiscal, so it needs to, we would align it with the work week that are hourly employees. So 2 weeks prior, the following Thursday, you get paid. So you work 2 weeks, following Thursday, you get paid. In order for us to do that would mean the first paycheck of the new fiscal year, July 3rd, there would not be a paycheck for those salaried employees. They would still be getting the entire amount within the year, but to them it would seem as though they were missing a paycheck, because they would not be getting, they'd be expecting a paycheck on that first Thursday in July, and they wouldn't actually get one until July 18th. So Donna and Amanda and I met on Friday. They shared with me their plans. We have some questions as to the proper procedure, and make sure we're doing things the way we had discussed with Department of Labor. So I've reached back out to Thomas Wydra, who is the Wage and Workplace Director, and one of the investigators that had come out and talked to us in the first place, and they had said they would make themselves available to us to help us with the process. So we were hoping that they would say they could meet with us today so we could have these questions answered, but never happened when we wanted to. So we're trying to set something up for later this week. We're playing email tag at this point. So we hope that very shortly we can have some answers so that we can have the conversation with the, there are 15, what is a stipend? Really 14 regular salaried pays that this would affect. And that includes the three of us. So, yes, you are paid on a salary basis.
yeah,
So we want to make sure that we can communicate to them in as much advance notice as we can, so that they, if that were to happen, they could plan for that. This is something that happens at places elsewhere. I know at the state level, there tends to be
there's
always a holdback.
Yeah, I was really surprised to learn this was the way that we do our pay.
Right, and I think it's probably the way it started at the beginning of time, and then we just continued it.
Because of that challenge of there's going to be a gap
There's
somewhere
going to be a gap somewhere.
while the calendar catches up with those
That's right.
salaries.
And so one of our questions was, could we mitigate that by splitting that first check? And we're not sure if they would be on board with that. We want to make sure if we're making this big change, because the Department of Labor has asked, that we do it the right way. So before we put anything in place, we want to speak with them and then begin those conversations with those salaried employees. So again, we want to be able to give them enough time and notice so that they can plan for what to them will seem like they're not getting paid. I mean, it will be a lack of paycheck, but they will be paid that entire salary within the calendar year. So,
I would hope that they be told this like right now,
yes,
to give them a chance.
correct.
In case there, you know, some people have everything planned to
Yeah.
where I get my rent is due on the 5th,
Exactly.
and I save enough rent to pay, and if
Yes,
I don't
and
get
so
my
some of-
paycheck, I don't have my rent.
Exactly, so some of our technical questions for them revolve around those things so that we can let them know. Donna and Amanda have a pretty good plan already in place, and we just want to make sure that we are doing all the things that the Department of Labor would agree upon since they came to us regarding this. So I will keep you in the loop, especially besides being selectmen and the governing body, it affects your checks as well. So when we have that, that's right. So when we sit down and have that meeting with those employees, you will be, of course, invited. All right. So the next item of business, do you have any other questions? The next item of business is to call our annual town meeting. So I move the following call. The Town of Willington Notice and Warning Annual Town Budget Meeting for General Government and Education. The electors of the Town of Willington and all persons who are entitled to move in town meeting on the matters mentioned in the following warning are hereby warned and notified to meet at the Old Town Hall at 11 Common Road in Willington on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019 at 7 p.m. for the following purposes. Item 1, to discuss the proposed general government and education budgets for the fiscal year, July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. A summary of the town budget is estimated general government budget operating $4,404,522. Under capital, school bond $0, general purpose bonds $195,000, reserve fund $145,000, capital expenditures $74,000, capital projects $0, total general government $4,818,522. Estimated education K through 8, $8,689,095. Region 19, $4,196,986. Total town budget, $17,704,603. Total estimated revenues, $4,008,095. To be raised by taxation, $13,696,508. Less applied fund balance, $410,000. The net amount to be raised by taxation, $13,286,508. Item 2, to set a date not less than 7 nor more than 14 days thereafter for a vote on the annual general government and education budgets by a separate yes or no vote on the voting machines. Item 3, to set the town office building as the polling place and to set the hours of the referendum during which votes may be cast, not less than between the hours of 12 o'clock noon and 8 o'clock p.m., and not more than between the hours of 6 o'clock a.m. and 8 o'clock p.m. Item 4, to see if the townspeople, on the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen, will adopt the capital improvement program for fiscal years 2020 to 2024. Item 5, to see if the townspeople, on the recommendation of the Regional School District Number 19 Board of Education, will appropriate $5,250,000 for replacement of all or portions of the E.O. Smith High School roof and related improvements and work, and authorize bonds and temporary notes to finance the portion of the appropriation not funded from grants. Dated at Willington, this 15th day of April 2019. Willington Board of Selectmen, Erica G. Washinsky, Liza Boritz, John Blessington. Is there a second?
Second. Can you read that one more time? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I missed the word here.
Yeah.
All right, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, and we just need to sign this before we leave this evening. This copy, and then Robin will get it noticed in the proper newspaper, she's all ready to go. Then town meeting will be next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, April 23rd at 7 p.m. at the Old Town Hall. And then next time we'll vote on who gets to read it next. All right, item C was a unemployment claim discussion, so I wanted you both to be aware, as you know, we had a claim of unemployment from an employee who resigned. We did appeal that. We did get notice last week that we lost the appeal. So we have the option of appealing at one more level. There's no guarantee that we win. The town attorney is confident in the case that we have, but we haven't, we were not granted the appeal in the first level, so I don't know how it will go, but if this board would like me to continue that, we can, or we can let it rest and pay the claim. I do not have an amount on it, and we have not received a bill. Our estimations are that it's about $16,000
For the claim.
for the claim.
And the legal fees?
I don't know what they are thus far, so we've already been billed for some research that had been done on it, some preparation. I have not seen the bill yet for the actual hearing that we had on April 11th. Where the attorney, we certainly at this point, it's nowhere near 16,000.
Start talking about hearings.
That's right.
You're gonna be
So the-
climbing up there.
Right, the first hearing was about an hour. I believe it was a little under. I was a little disappointed in the way in which it was conducted. We seemed rushed, but they had a time frame. You don't necessarily know when you get there. And then we had to hurry up because our time was up. So we're looking at least another hour of time with the town attorney for the portion of the hearing. So just the
We are paying, on the hearing, we're paying our attorney. Are we paying any other part of the hearing?
There was no cost for the hearing.
It's unusual, but okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
None that we've been made aware of. Certainly none of the documentation spoke to a cost. You have a right to appeal. And there was no attorney on the other end, so.
And is this one more appeal, or can we just keep?
No, one more level of appeal, that would be it. So we could continue it if you would like, or,
I'd really like to have some idea what it's cost us so far and what it's gonna cost us if we continue.
we have until next, I believe, I have to get the paperwork back from Amanda that they came in. It's 26th maybe, is the date in which we had to file a final appeal.
6th of April.
26th, it's somewhere around the end of this exact day, but it's next week, if we choose to. Again, the amount of time it takes is what will determine the cost for the attorney. So, right now, our attorney's line item is low. We have not overspent that. I would not like to get anywhere near that. But again, this would be time preparing for the hearing, would come at a cost in the actual hearing.
Already lost. Was there any surprises? Did we expect to lose? Did we expect to lose?
Our attorney was surprised that we lost, but oftentimes these hearings do not favor the employer. So unemployment hearings.
And the appeals sometimes do not
Correct,
favor the employer as well.
correct. It's
Is it
a
also-
pretty subjective process.
It probably is.
It is a very subjective process. So,
We're probably at the point now that
we can,
unless there's some,
right, we could just let this go.
unless there's some massive change, something that we missed or
You
they
can't,
missed.
so what the attorney said to me is that we can't present new evidence. You can speak to the evidence that was presented at this hearing, but that there's no new evidence introduced. So we would just be speaking to what was already there, and again, that was already kind of subjective. So it's, you share your side, the employee shares their side, and a neutral referee makes a decision. And it goes across a board at the next level. It's not as though he could say to us, he feels we have a strong case, but it didn't come out for us this time, so, he didn't have really any guidance one way or the other, it would just be our choice.
In my experience, I feel like this would be just throwing good money after bad, you know what I mean?
I think so.
To continue to do it. The track record of working with Department of Labor, I think it's probably fairly clear cut for us, and I think
I agree. I think we took the right first step in appealing the claim, and that had we won there, that would be fine. We did not. I'm not sure that I feel confident that the decision will go in a different direction. And if our attorney felt that it would, he would have guided us in that direction. So is this, we want to put all our eggs on, or do we just want to move on from the matter?
Probably move on.
Okay. So with that, I will let him know. We should begin seeing bills from that. There is still some funds in that for this fiscal year. We budgeted for it next fiscal year. We're not sure how it will wash out. The claim goes back to November, so we don't know if we'll get billed from November to now, in which case 6 months of it would be in this fiscal year. We would need a transfer later. So we're really waiting until we start to see some notices from Department of Labor. They don't have any answers for us. All right, old business. Exploratory Flag Committee. I have nothing new on that matter. We left it there in case they came back to us with some answers on whether or not what they could attach to the poles and if they've gotten some from Eversource. So in lieu of that, we'll wait and see what happens next meeting. Item B is the discussion once again about the emergency vehicle preemption equipment. So I believe both departments are in favor of putting the devices on their equipment. Alex, could you
Yep.
speak at least? We just want to know if Dick spoke here, and did he speak with you individually?
Yep, so we talked briefly. I think the plan is the first truck is to get the ambulance started, or at least get it on the ambulance. And then, as the budget allows, move further into the apparatus.
After our meeting last, 2 weeks ago, Dick had reached back out to Ethan Doniker at DOT and let them know that we had talked about kind of moving forward with this, and that Ethan's response was, I'll reach out to the LTA for Selectwoman in the future to complete an official report and final formal agreement. So although we haven't voted yes, we're going to do this, we wanted to see the agreement, he's going to send that. And so when I get that, I'll make that available and we can discuss. So I'm moving at the state's pace with that. So I thank Dick for doing the work and then reaching out to both departments. And I do believe the conversation I had with him, he spoke to Chief Snyder too, but he's away this week. The last item, we talked last week, 2 weeks ago, regarding the property purchase request from Willington Hill. Although we had not moved forward or taken any action on it, the fire department had sent a letter to the Board of Finance. So at the budget hearing last week, which you were both at, you heard them speak to that and the request there. They were asking for $50,000 from the general fund or whatever source they felt best that would help pay for the $350,000 investment at 25 Old Farms Road. They took no action at that point, but had some rather questions that need to be answered. And so asked 2 members of the Board of Finance, one of the alternates and a regular member, to work with the selectmen and the zoning office in answering some of those questions. They do have a meeting set up for 2 weeks from tonight on the 29th at 6 p.m. I believe it's 6 p.m. I'll let you know for sure. And that they can answer some of the questions they have. We did have a meeting with one of the members from Willington Hill on Friday, and I sat in with Mike and Emily, so they answered some of the questions which they had and we had around the use of the house, which is the rectory, and that, you know, we obviously have some concerns. It was built in 1985. Could there be a foundation issue? That's certainly something to be looked at, that whether the town puts in funds, and I think we're far from that decision at this point, or they move forward with it, that they should make sure that they have some testing included before their purchase can go through. That was, Mike strongly advised them on that, as did I. The second item was that the rectory was permitted as an accessory use to the church. And so there was, they can't have 2 uses on one lot. And so they would not be able to then rent it out as they thought. And they could subdivide it so that it could be a separate dwelling. That has its own concerns, whether or not the septic is connected. You'd have to get the health district involved, if it could be split, what that would look like. If they split it, how many acres would they have? So there's still lots of questions. Again, the member of the fire department that came, I think he thought the intention of the meeting was not a meeting, but to present some questions they had or some research they had done, so that Mike could prepare for the meeting on the 29th. So we had some conversation, but that most of the next portion will be on the 29th with all parties, and the building official would be at that meeting as well, because he has some concerns over different permitted use that would be needed, because it would need a new special permit, because it would be a new use. It was used as a church, and now it would be used as a training facility and or firehouse. So some of the other things the fire department had asked to this letter to the Board of Finance was, besides the town putting in $50,000, allowing them to pay for insurance of just under $300 a month out of their current budget, adding the lawn mowing out of the mowing contract, and allowing an abatement or exemption of taxes. Those things were discussed, but I'm not sure if you were still there, Liza, when the discussion happened. Absolutely no direction was taken there, and I think those things would have to wait until there was actually a purchase or an investment. So I'll keep you updated. If either of you would like to attend the meeting on the 29th, it'll be here at 6 o'clock, and I assume they'll use this space out here because of the lack of big meeting space.
What year was the church itself, do we know?
That I don't have off the top.
I thought the whole thing went in a lot earlier than 1986, you said.
The church did, this was just the rectory.
Okay.
The rectory was built in 85. So yes, I believe some discussions with the church is more, but I don't have, I know I have a card upstairs.
Would be good to know, because that makes me even more nervous
Yeah.
when you say that.
Yes, absolutely. So from our end, it would make us do things very different. But even the advice given to the fire department is make sure that your contract allows you some leeway in which to get out of this if there's a crumbling foundation issue. So whether or not they do that, right now the contract has nothing to do with the town. It is simply with Willington Fire Association. So this work that the Board of Finance is asking us to sit in on is so that they can determine whether or not it was feasible action for the town to take.
Right, because even though this is only the fire department involved right now, ultimately we will be involved.
Absolutely.
Because the money they spend will have to be made up from somewhere.
Correct.
They'll be the ones they would come to, so.
So,
We want to keep
Yeah, I think there's lots of questions still to be answered. They do have a clock that's ticking. They originally had just 60 days from their offer, and I believe Chief Snyder told us that March 25th was the date in which they made the offer.
Okay.
And so that would give them until the end of May to move forward. So he was made aware by us we didn't know the exact dates at that point, but we had already said, and so did the Board of Finance, that that date may not be suitable for the town. So in order for the town to make that kind of purchase, there would need to be town meetings. So there's steps to get up to that and then to get to another town meeting in order to do that. And so they were also encouraged to seek a potential extension on that timeframe. So I don't know where they stand with that. So as those things change and come up, I'll keep you informed and updated. All right. Good and welfare. I'll mention to you that Don Berg, you had asked that I keep in the loop of the solar panels. Don has been working with Mike in planning and zoning. Mike used the land use attorney to take a look at the lease and some questions. He's communicated with Don basically where he'd like to put them. Some of them cannot go where they want to, simply because of some zoning issues. Others within the lease, there had Mike's, they need to seek permission from us specifically to install any new structure, even if it's within the lease line. So that's step one, based on the lease. And so he'd have to come back to us to get written authorization. If you go that route, he'd be able to move forward without permitting. But some of where he wants them to go, if we go out and take a look at that, it's where there should be some plantings. And so Mike has concerns and expressed that to him, that to be honest with you, within the lease area and setbacks aside, I have concerns about the panels. The extreme proximity to the building curb line presents access issues, snow plowing concerns, and in my opinion distracts from the residential aesthetic that the project was designed to have. Mike, I think like us, are in favor of solar infrastructure, but where he has planned for them to go is less than ideal. They do have some on the buildings. So the front half of the building, they can go on, and he's used half of the front half. So in my opinion, they still have a quarter of the buildings in which to add solar to that I think would be better than where he would like it to go. Don was in a little bit more of a hurry because of some incentives from Eversource, but so he's talking with Mike and asked Mike if he had some other suggestions. Mike had suggested those carports, but that is obviously a much larger expense than even putting them on the roofs. So Housing Authority was meeting this evening. I don't know where they decided to go with it at that point, but no communication has come to the select board regarding permissions.
When the planning and zoning, I wasn't sure aesthetics was supposed to be a part of their
It's not.
communication.
So one of the areas, so I was at a quarterly meeting at the senior center, and I took a look around. It's interesting to look at it in person as opposed to on the plans. And so there is an end building and the road comes around here. There are 3 plantings there, and it's kind of a sloped hill. That's where he's presenting putting solar panel number 1. I would say they go here, and the building is right here, and the air conditioning units are right here. So I think they can pose some issues. Certainly plowing into them, they would be on the road. To me, I'm more concerned with them pointed at the building, potentially into people's windows. Could it alter the color of the siding with that direct sun
Yeah, but
off the panels? Those are, right,
those are considerations, whether it looks prettier or not, to me is not a consideration so much. And it should not be from planning and
No,
zoning.
so from, they had setback issues in which they couldn't allow, and then that became a question of our, within our lease line, and he has to come to us for that. So, but yeah, there are places on the map that they cannot be placed, and Mike let him know that based on, the lease, and there was specific grass seed mix that was to be in that area and maintained there. Because of that, the panels can't exist in that area. So the unfortunate thing is there's one small unit he can put next to the building, and I'm not sure that close proximity to the air conditioning units and the corner of the building is the best, God bless you, place when they're, they still have rooftop access. Again, them coming to us and asking us to extend the lease line to go outside of that is still a possibility, and that would be for the board to decide. As of Friday, we have collected $13,249,156 in taxes. That puts us $57,968 over budget. Collected just a small portion behind that, so we hit budget and then some still on this year's taxes. I have our March numbers from Troop C. During the month of March 2019, troopers at Troop C responded to 491 calls of service in the town of Willington, 11 accidents, 16 criminal investigations, 1 burglary, 1 larceny, 462 non-reportable matters. In addition to that, the following motor vehicle enforcement was 1 DUI, 193 traffic citations, and 5 warnings. And my last item under good and welfare, we've shared it in a public notice, we've shared it on our social media, and I know the school is sharing that they are beginning community engagement conversations revolving the future of our schools. The first date is Monday, April 22nd at 6 p.m. at the Hall School Library. Then again, Thursday, May 9th at 6 p.m. in the Center School Multipurpose Room. And on Saturday, May 18th at 10 a.m. Upstairs Common Room of the Town Office Building. So, they're talking about what to do based on the study that was done in 2017 with our 2 schools, whether we stay the course, renovate each school, consolidate into 1 school and renovate, or build a new school. And so, I apologize, Superintendent Stevens has sent a letter out to parents in the community. Again, we shared that, if anyone would like a copy. And the dates of those items. So we encourage anyone in the community to attend and participate in those conversations. Do you have anything for good and welfare? Or are you done with that? Nothing? This Friday, the 19th, we are closed. It's Good Friday. And earlier today we discovered that the furnace here at the town office building is not working, so hopefully it's not freezing. We did have someone come out and take a look at it. He needed to get some parts. Do we know when he was coming back from it? No.
When the parts are
When they come in. So we will see how things are. We are very fortunate that it is late April and the temperatures are not frigid, or we would have likely to be closing the town office building. Which, depending on how temperatures go, is a possibility, but we're not at that point yet. And Sunday is Easter, so I wish all of those that observe a happy Easter. And Passover's on Friday, and so all those who observe that. And with that, I move to adjourn at 7:29.